Barry Lyndon wasn't just a historical costume drama, it was Stanley Kubrick's strangest, most obsessive cinematic experiment. On the surface, it looked like a slow-moving 18th century epic, but behind the camera, tempers flared, careers cracked, and Kubrick drove his cast and crew to the brink. From NASA-modified lenses to broken marriages, from dueling disasters to casting nightmares, the making of Barry Lyndon was chaos disguised as elegance. Today, we're revealing 20 weird facts about Barry Lyndon, secrets so strange that even Kubrick superfans may not know them. And wait until you hear the bonus fact. It's the one Kubrick never wanted you to discover. Let's begin. 1. The NASA lens that changed cinema forever. Kubrick wasn't satisfied with ordinary cameras. For Barry Lyndon, he wanted to capture candlelight scenes with no artificial lighting, just flickering wax flames. The problem? No film camera could do it, so he tracked down an experimental Zeiss lens, originally developed for NASA satellites. The lens was so fast at f/0.7 that only 10 existed in the world. Kubrick bought 3. But here's the kicker. These lenses weren't designed for motion pictures. Technicians had to physically rebuild Mitchell cameras to fit them, shaving down the mirrors, widening the mounts, and making the cameras nearly impossible to operate. The depth of field was razor thin. Actors had to hit precise marks or vanish into blur. It wasn't just cinematography, it was a technical war. And Kubrick won. The candlelit interiors of Barry Lyndon remain some of the most hauntingly beautiful images in film history. 2. Kubrick nearly killed his cast with candlelight. The beauty of Barry Lyndon's famous candlelit scenes came at a brutal cost. Those Zeiss lenses could capture the faint glow, but the candles themselves were blindingly bright. To mimic 18th century ambience, Kubrick demanded chandeliers with dozens of flames burning simultaneously. The heat on set was suffocating. Actors sweated through wigs and makeup while struggling to keep their expressions calm. The wax dripped dangerously onto costumes worth thousands of dollars. One actress joked, "We weren't acting, we were surviving." But the worst part? Kubrick insisted on retakes, endless retakes. If Ryan O'Neal blinked wrong or if a shadow shifted slightly, the entire scene was reset. Hours turned into days. Crew members fainted from the heat, while actors stood frozen, pretending candlelit grace. It wasn't just filming, it was endurance theater, and Kubrick was the merciless director. 3. Ryan O'Neal wasn't the first choice. You'd think Kubrick wanted Ryan O'Neal for his acting chops. Wrong. O'Neal was a studio compromise. Kubrick originally envisioned bigger stars, Robert Redford, perhaps even Al Pacino, but every major actor declined. They found the script slow, the role unflattering, or the director's reputation terrifying. So why O'Neal? Because of a cold calculation. Love Story had made him one of the most bankable names of the early 70s, especially overseas. Warner Brothers pressured Kubrick. If he wanted a massive budget, he needed a star who could sell tickets worldwide. Here's the irony. O'Neal's casting angered critics. They said he looked too modern, too stiff, too blank. But that blankness, whether intentional or not, actually made Barry's rise and fall more tragic. He wasn't a grand hero. He was a hollow man chasing illusions. 4. Marisa Berenson lived like her character. As Lady Lyndon, Marisa Berenson glides through Barry Lyndon like a living portrait. Serene, silent, trapped in aristocratic melancholy. But off-screen, Kubrick demanded she become that figure. He instructed her not to speak unless spoken to. He banned her from spending time with other cast members. He even isolated her from crew chatter so that when cameras rolled, her eyes carried genuine loneliness. Berenson later admitted that she lived in near-monastic silence during filming. She spent nights journaling, wandering alone, and studying paintings from the 1700s to mimic their stillness. The result? An eerie authenticity. Her performance feels less like acting and more like someone trapped in time. It wasn't a role. It was entrapment. And Kubrick, ever the manipulator, orchestrated it perfectly. 5. The duels were brutally real. Duels dominate Barry Lyndon, and Kubrick refused to fake them. Actors trained with real swords and pistols, rehearsing under strict choreography. But on set, accidents erupted. Ryan O'Neal sliced open his knuckles. A stuntman broke 2 ribs. In one pistol duel, the blanks misfired so violently that smoke burns scarred an actor's cheek. Kubrick's obsession with authenticity pushed performers to exhaustion. He insisted on exact historical stances, perfect 18th century etiquette, and camera takes lasting hours. The pistol duel between Barry and Lord Bullingdon, one of the film's climaxes, reportedly took 42 takes, over 3 weeks of shooting. The tension wasn't just scripted. By the end, actors despised each other. The resentment in their eyes? Not acting. It was real rage, bottled by Kubrick until the cameras captured it. 6. The child actor was manipulated for authenticity. The role of Brian, Barry's young son, was played by David Morley. But Kubrick didn't treat him like a child actor. He treated him like a pawn in his grand design. Crew members recalled that Kubrick deliberately kept Morley away from Ryan O'Neal and Marisa Berenson between takes. Why? So that when the boy looked at his parents on screen, there was an authentic distance, a sense of unfamiliarity. For the heartbreaking deathbed scene, Kubrick reportedly rehearsed Morley in near isolation, feeding him fragmented lines, instructing him not to act, but to be. The boy's performance, fragile, haunting, devastating, remains one of the film's emotional peaks. It wasn't theater, it was manipulation. Kubrick made sure Brian looked like a ghostly presence, a child slipping away, not just in story, but in reality. 7. The production nearly bankrupted. Warner Brothers' Barry Lyndon was meant to be Kubrick's follow-up to 2001, a space odyssey, a surefire hit. But as the shoot dragged on, Warner Brothers executives panicked. The budget ballooned from $2.5 million to over $11 million, a staggering sum in the mid-1970s. What went wrong? Endless delays. Weather-dependent exteriors in Ireland forced entire schedules to collapse. Kubrick refused to compromise on natural light, waiting days or even weeks for clouds to form just right. Each delay meant more money, more overtime, and more pressure. Executives couldn't fire Kubrick. He had final cut and a contract that made him untouchable. Instead, they begged. He ignored them. The irony? Despite the budget nightmare, Barry Lyndon barely broke, even in America. Only decades later would critics recognize it as a masterpiece, too strange and too perfect for its time. 8. Ryan O'Neal's career. Never recovered O'Neal should have soared after Barry Lyndon. Instead, the film became his undoing. Critics panned his performance, calling him wooden, stiff, even a mannequin in a powdered wig. What audiences didn't know was that Kubrick wanted him that way. But Hollywood didn't see nuance. It saw failure. After Barry Lyndon, O'Neal's offers for leading roles plummeted. He went from being one of the hottest stars of the early 70s to struggling for relevance by the 80s. O'Neal later admitted that working with Kubrick was the most demanding experience of his life. Yet the irony remains. His most prestigious collaboration also became the weight that dragged down his career. It wasn't triumph. It was slow exile, all because Kubrick molded him into emptiness. 9. The landscapes were treated like characters. Kubrick didn't just want Ireland and England as backdrops. He treated the landscapes as characters, silent judges watching Barry's rise and fall. Cinematographer John Alcott recalled that Kubrick spent days scouting hills, valleys, and lakes to find the right emotional terrain. But filming them wasn't easy. Horses sank in muddy fields. Equipment toppled in sudden storms. Crews spent hours pushing carts uphill just so Kubrick could frame a single distant silhouette. Every wide shot looks effortless, but the reality was grueling labor. The irony? Those landscapes carry as much weight as the actors. Rolling hills dwarf Barry, endless skies mock his ambitions, and misty fields swallow his dreams. What audiences didn't realize is that nature itself became Barry's rival, a silent force that made his struggles look meaningless. 10. The final duel. Almost ended. O'Neill's career. The climactic duel between Barry and Lord Bullingdon wasn't just dangerous, it was nearly catastrophic. Kubrick staged it in a dilapidated barn with real pistols firing blanks. But these blanks were anything but safe. They produced deafening blasts, clouds of smoke, and enough recoil to injure. During one take, O'Neill misfired so close to his hand that fragments burned his skin. Production halted while medics treated him. Kubrick, unfazed, simply reset the shot and demanded another take. Leon Vitali, who played Bullingdon, later confessed the duel was emotionally draining. Kubrick pushed him until he broke down crying between takes. That raw anguish? It stayed in the final cut. The duel isn't just about revenge, it's about collapse, of Barry, of O'Neill's patience, and of the set itself. It nearly ended careers before the film even premiered. 11. Kubrick's obsession with paintings. Controlled. Every frame. Barry Lyndon doesn't just look like a period piece, it looks like art come alive. That wasn't coincidence. Kubrick obsessed over 18th century paintings, especially works by Thomas Gainsborough and William Hogarth. He ordered the cinematography team to study brushstrokes, lightfall, and composition as if they were storyboards. Every scene was blocked like a canvas. Actors were told not to act, but to stand as if being painted. This frustrated Ryan O'Neil, who felt like furniture in a museum. But Kubrick refused movement that looked modern. He wanted stillness, elegance, inevitability. The payoff? Critics later marveled at how the film blurred cinema and fine art. What audiences didn't realize was that Kubrick had essentially made a 3-hour moving gallery. The characters weren't just trapped in fate, they were trapped in frames. 12. Ireland was both paradise and prison. Kubrick chose Ireland for its untouched landscapes and authentic 18th century architecture. But it came at a cost. The IRA conflict was raging in the mid-1970s, and a high-profile American production quickly attracted unwanted attention. Rumors spread that Kubrick received threats, forcing Warner Brothers to provide security. Crew members spoke of nervous nights, fearing the production could become a target. Eventually, Kubrick pulled the shoot out of Ireland entirely, finishing in England. But even before that, Ireland was difficult. Mud swallowed carriages, livestock wandered into frames, and unpredictable weather ruined weeks of planning. Still, the Irish sequences gave the film its soul. The rolling green hills, the gloomy skies, the haunting ruins. They weren't just scenery. They were history itself, pressing down on Barry, reminding audiences that he could never escape the weight of time. 13. The film's runtime was even longer. At 3 hours, Barry Lyndon already tests patience, but few know Kubrick's first cut ran nearly 4 hours. Warner Brothers executives begged him to trim it, warning that audiences wouldn't tolerate endless duels and candlelit silences. Kubrick resisted until he realized something strange. The cuts didn't weaken the EQ film. They made it stronger. Removing entire subplots about minor characters, he sharpened the focus on Barry's emptiness. Still, what remained was slow by Hollywood standards. Roger Ebert described it as a film to walk into, not watch. That slowness drove away casual moviegoers, but cinephiles later embraced it as part of its genius. It wasn't a fast-paced spectacle, it was a meditation on futility, stretched until viewers felt the same suffocating passage of time Barry endured. 14. Critics destroyed it. At first, when Barry Lyndon premiered in 1975, it wasn't hailed as a masterpiece. It was mocked. Many critics called it boring, lifeless, even an endurance test. American audiences stayed away, and the film limped at the box office. The backlash devastated Ryan O'Neal, who had gambled his reputation on Kubrick's vision. Warner Brothers executives declared the movie a disappointment, despite its Oscars for cinematography, art direction, costume design, and music. But time changed everything. By the 1990s, critics began rewatching it with fresh eyes. Martin Scorsese and Lars von Trier hailed it as one of Kubrick's greatest works. Today, it's routinely ranked among the most beautiful films ever made. What was once considered a failure slowly became legend, proof that masterpieces sometimes arrive disguised as disasters. 15. Kubrick's most personal film fans often link Kubrick to 2001, The Shining, or A Clockwork Orange. But insiders say Barry Lyndon was his most personal film. Why? Because beneath the powdered wigs and duels, it's a story about futility, about ambition crushed by time, fate, and forces beyond control. Kubrick himself lived in isolation, obsessed with control yet aware that even genius can't beat mortality. Through Barry's hollow rise and bitter fall, he projected his own anxieties about legacy. Leon Vitali, Kubrick's assistant, later said, "This was the film closest to Stanley's heart. He never forgave the critics for misunderstanding it. It wasn't just a costume drama, it was Kubrick's confession hidden in 18th century disguise." Bonus fact: the film may have changed how movies are restored. Decades after its release, Barry Lyndon nearly vanished into faded prints. Its delicate candlelit images degraded quickly, making restorations a nightmare. But the film's cult status pressured archivists to invent new digital restoration techniques in the 1990s and 2000s. That process, painstakingly matching colors, rebuilding shadows, and preserving detail from the NASA lenses, influenced how classic films are restored today. In other words, Kubrick's obsession with candlelight forced future generations to reimagine film preservation itself. It wasn't just a movie, it was a blueprint for keeping cinema alive. Barry Lyndon wasn't just another historical epic, it was Stanley Kubrick's most daring experiment, a slow, merciless vision of ambition, futility, and beauty. Behind the stillness lay chaos, burning candles, broken tempers, ruined careers, and one director's relentless grip on every frame. If you learned something new today, drop a comment with your favorite fact, hit like, and subscribe for more untold stories from the movies you thought you knew. Because in the world of cinema, just like in Barry Lyndon, what looks serene on the surface usually hides a battlefield underneath.